Hey everybody. This is the beginning of a new live stream series I'm going to be doing. Um, and there's a little bit of a bait and switch going on here. Uh, Due to YouTube's algorithm, I'm going to be, from now on, live streaming myself playing a different arcade game from the 1980s to the early 2000s while I talk politics with you guys. Now, the game playing itself serves as just a backdrop and a distraction. And in case you're wondering, I'm not going to be taking it too seriously. But the political stuff I'm going to be talking about is basically what I want people to be paying attention to here. So hopefully, what I can do is have a little bit of fun, de stress myself while I'm doing this, as well as trick people into watching this program who watch a lot of these live stream Twitch streamers, video game streamers. Now, I'm not taking credit for this idea. It was actually suggested to me by my friend Michael Buchanan, but his original idea was just to do it for fun. But I sort of modified the idea and thought, well, most of the people who are streaming these kind of things on YouTube right now uh, are just not political at all, or in fact, if they are political, they're usually like sort of right leaning or sort of anti left reactionary, anti SJW kind of obsessed people for the most part. Now, I'm a very openly left wing person. Um, some people might call me a radical leftist. I'm not necessarily a socialist. Foreign policy is my main thing. And so, yeah, what I would like from you guys is chime in with any questions you have, any topics you'd like me to talk about, and also any games that you'd like me to play while I'm having these discussions in the future. But today, I've already chosen which game I'm going to play, and I'll tell you guys about that in a second. So I'm going to join you guys in the live chat right now. This is my first time doing this, so please give me a second here. All right, so there are people in here. Um, Hi, Grant. From what I can see on my end, I didn't think anybody was in here yet, so I apologize for my beard rubbing and ambient staring into the screen here. I'm just going to share the link on social media, and we'll be up and running here in a second. Hey, Ami. Thanks for coming in, guys. This is going to be another slightly slow start, so I appreciate that. I am a Twitch streamer now. Hold on a second. That is absolutely right. So, first off, I'm just going to start by asking you guys, how do you feel about Trump saving us from the Iran war? I mean, he's a pacifist. He decided not to respond to Iran's military escalation. So, um, I take back what I said about Trump being a neocon. I think he is now anti-war again. Obviously, I'm joking, but you're already sort of starting to see people turning back in that direction. After it seemed like a lot of the people were still hanging on to a little bit of a thread that Trump was anti-war, last night we're all ready to throw him under the bus, to hold his feet to the fire, and today it's all okay now. Things are good again. He's not going to launch a retaliatory strike, apparently, according to him. So I guess we're all good. Um, but what do you guys think about that? I mean, because last night I was convinced that I was going to wake up this morning to news that we had launched an airstrike in Iran at Iranian targets. So, what do you think about that? More sanctions, Bird World says yes. I mean, sanctions are war. So for him to just say he's going to put more sanctions on Iran, of course, is an act of war. Um, but of course, I have to admit, I mean, I am extremely relieved that I did not wake up to news that we had bombed Iran today. I know that seems like a small thing to hold on to at this point, but I think it's really all that we have right now. I mean, we have to be relieved that it didn't accelerate that fast. Of course, this can accelerate immediately at any point now, because arguably this is the closest we've ever been to an actual full scale war with Iran. So I think it's naive and short sighted to completely relax and to be like, okay, everything's good. Let's go back to how things were. Let's go back to letting Trump do his diet anti war dance and celebrate and backpat Tucker, who actually deserves a little bit more credit than I've been giving him, because last night, I think Tucker, it was the first time that he blamed Trump directly for these movements towards war, which is kind of a bizarre thing to say, that this is the first time he blamed the president directly for his decisions to go to war. But the entire time, Tucker's little diet anti-war dance that he does on Fox News, he's found a way so far to separate it from the president himself. And I think maybe to him, if he's in any way genuine, he is doing that because he still thinks he has the president's ear and doesn't want to offend him too much. Because if you offend Trump too much, he's never going to listen to you about anything. He never listens to anybody about anything anyways. But if you offend him too much, the chances that he's going to listen to you drastically decrease. So I would argue that's what Tucker has been doing this whole time. He's been sort of holding off on Trump. He doesn't want to offend him and to separate and to have that breakup with Trump, because apparently they talk on the phone all the time. So I think we're seeing also a similar dynamic playing out with Rand Paul. If you notice, Rand Paul has sort of been on the sideline acting like he's still really anti-war and occasionally will blame Pompeo, but then on the other side or another track saying that he has all these personal meetings with Trump and he believes that Trump doesn't want war and blah, blah, blah. So he's doing this weird balancing act as well. These people want to have access to the president because they, on some level, think that he is seriously interested in pulling back our wars. For whatever reason, they're convinced they're taking Trump at face value. But before I play a game while I'm talking to you guys, and this is going to be an experiment, mind you, I don't even know if I'm going to do any more of these after this. I'm personally obsessed with old arcade games specifically. Many of the games I want to play during these live streams have never been released on home consoles. Many of them are Japanese only. many of them are actually really weird as fuck and have sort of a political leanings themselves. So, for example, I'll show you guys sometime on another episode how many 80s games that were put out in arcades made by Japanese companies are basically all themed around the Contras and South American guerrillas and CIA funded mercenaries and things like that. I mean, there are so many games. It's not just the game Contra, which is the most popular one, but there's like 100 Contra clones or games that are adjacent to Contra in terms of their politics. And it's actually quite funny to me because I think Japanese companies were making these games mostly for American arcade playing audiences. So they were sort of trying to play into what they thought American people liked, and that was basically Rambo, Contra themed games with guys with their shirts off with army camo pants, running through the jungle blowing people away. Or a lot of Japanese companies made these beat 'em up games, and beat 'em up genre, of course, comes from Double Dragon. But the beat 'em up genre in general is very politically problematic. If you haven't played most of the beat 'em up games, most of them are basically just you're like a street vigilante beating up minorities or people of color who are street criminals. And I think Japanese companies actually sort of got away with doing this by using a lot of palette swapping. So they'll have like a black or an African American character who's like a street criminal you're fighting on the streets, and then they'll palette swap him so that it's just the same sprite, but they'll just lighten up the skin color. They'll make it also a white guy. So there's a lot of that going on in old arcade games. They even did it in one of my favorite games, Mortal Kombat 2. The character of Jade, which was a secret character, is just a palette swap. It's trying to look like an African American palette swap of Katana or Melina. It just looks weird. It almost looks like her skin is bronze. So it's not just Japanese companies. Midway is an American company. They made Mortal Kombat. John, hey John, how's it going? John says Obama started a proxy war against Iran in Yemen using Saudi Arabia. Clinton took the MEK off the State Department's terrorism list. Yeah, I wish I had time to go over all that history in the last Media Roots Radio episode. But there's so much history to go over. And John is dropping some knowledge there about the Clinton's administration's history with Iran. Which there's a lot to talk about there too. But I did a poll recently actually on Twitter asking people who they think has had the most hawkish approach to Iran so far as an administration. The three choices in the poll were the W. Bush administration, the Obama administration, and the Trump administration. And I was kind of surprised actually that the Trump administration actually won the poll, something like 75%. Obnobs. No, I definitely did not go on Tim Pool. I've debated with him multiple times on Twitter. He has actually threatened me a couple of times on Twitter because we shared some mutual friends and mutual connections back in the past. And I brought up how much of a bitch I think he is on Twitter. And he basically acted like he was about to like reveal some knowledge that some of these mutual friends had told him or something. And I was like, you can't threaten me, dude. Say what you're going to say. So, I mean, obviously I think the guy's a fraud and a grifter, but he's also just like a pathological liar. Because I challenge him to release anything he thinks he's sitting on that'll make me look bad. I know a lot more about him that'll make him look bad. For example, Tim, actually from a mutual friend that I know, he had access to their computer once, and without this person's permission, Tim went into their computer and on all of their social media pages liked his own stuff from their social media accounts, like dozens of different accounts. He went into their computer on Facebook, Twitter, all these different things, and actually liked his own stuff from this person's account. I mean, that's not criminal. It's maybe not certifiably insane, but it's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard about him, honestly. I've heard other weird things, but that in particular made me realize how much of a bizarre narcissist sociopath he actually is. Grant asked if I'm going to do a podcast about Watchmen now that it's over. You know, Abby and I actually we were planning on doing it in our impeachment episode, but we just had so much shit to talk about that we didn't want to get bogged down in Watchmen talk because we felt that we had talked about it too much. And we were also, I think we kind of regretted getting into it so much because we also thought that the direction it took as a show was quite shitty in the end. I mean, talk about jump the shark. I mean, it nuked the fridge, I think, which kind of in retrospect proved to me that the show writers pulled some tricks, let's just say. And I think that they actually planned something out originally that was more impactful, more interesting politically, and had a definitive ending. But they decided to keep it open-ended and change the third act of the whole story because they got renewed for a second season. And I will guarantee you that there will be a second season of that show with continuing characters. But I have a lot to say about it. I mean, let's just say that the political, racial angle they were trying to throw into the show, I think really ultimately amounted to nothing really risky or impactful. It was just sort of wallpaper. And arguably, I mean, they were trying to portray hooded justice. Spoilers, if you have not seen the Watchmen show, please turn your sound off now. But portraying hooded justice as a guy who had so much black rage that he had gone too far. And I think that's sort of what the show was trying to say, that he had gone too far in his vigilante justice against white supremacy when, you know, it makes me compare it to something like Django Unchained, where I'm sort of thinking that's the right way to show that kind of politics. Uncompromising, taking huge risks and swings, and not apologizing for it at all. The character Django in that film is supposed to be the hero. You're not supposed to, at any point, see him as someone who had gone too far or who was a gray area, bad, good guy. No, he was a hero in that movie. And in this show, they ultimately made it so hooded justice was sort of more ambiguous. Like, oh, he had gone so far with his rage that he might actually be a villain. In fact, I honestly don't know where they're going with that character. And I feel like in the second season, he may actually reveal himself to be a villain. John, the video games I'm showing, in case you just joined, in case anybody just joined, is I am actually going to be playing games while I'm talking to you guys, which might not work out because I don't play video games that much and I'm not that good at them. But the nice thing about arcade games is they have pretty much infinite credits. There was sort of an era of arcade games in the 80s, especially the early 80s, where they were fucking hard. I mean, like, challenging beyond belief, extremely frustrating. Towards the end of the 80s, games got easier and became sort of more quarter munchers where you could keep playing. For example, games like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you could keep putting in quarters, infinite continues. That was something that changed in the late 80s, early 90s. And in the 90s, you had this beautiful era of, as long as you had, you know, a roll of $5 in quarters, you could pretty much beat most arcade games because you would get infinite continues. And that include fighting games, beat 'em ups. But when you play older arcade games, you realize that even if you have, you know, an unlimited supply of quarters, you actually still have to be good. Like the original Contra arcade does not have infinite continues. It's fucking extremely hard. Excuse me. Unbuttered Toast. No, I don't have any of those games anymore. John, I'm sorry about this, but I sold my PS4. I got burnt out on it. Red Dead Redemption was great. I don't think I'm going to be playing any games like that for a while. I actually got a Nintendo Switch, and that's kind of where my console gaming is focused right now. I know. It sucks. Dragon's Lair, I don't have on this system. In case anyone's wondering what this is an illegal Chinese bootleg arcade machine running off of a Raspberry Pi computer inside of a plastic chassis that has 2-player joysticks. My webcam is not separate right now, or else I would show you. But look up Pandora's Box 6. Oddly, they still sell them on Amazon, which is kind of blows my mind because it comes with over 3,000 bootleg arcade games. But the makers of this product were actually smart enough to now they sell it without the games. So I was kind of shocked. I ordered one of these online thinking it would already become fully loaded with games, and it had nothing on it when I turned it on, and I thought I had gotten scammed. Well, I guess the way they've gotten around the Amazon Marketplace rules by selling this is they actually provide you a Google Drive link to download the entire ROM set. But MAME, anybody who uses MAME or arcades will know that some of the games don't run very well even on the fastest computers still. The emulations are not perfect. And the emulations are very dependent on how fast your computer is. So since this is a Raspberry Pi computer, which I think is fanless, it's sort of in the genre of fanless CPU computer. Since it's running off a Raspberry Pi, they had to be very selective about what games they could put on here. All the games on here pretty much run at full speed and run just like they're supposed to. So if you have any games you'd like to suggest that I play on this political podcast, because remember, this is going to be a bait and switch, I'm hoping to get people onto this channel who don't care about politics at all, who will be tricked by what I'm doing. So I know I'm probably revealing too much and I'm giving away too much for those people, but I think I think that plan is something I'm going to stick with if I can pull this off. So last question I'll answer before I start the first game. Andre Gunnar says, "What do you think of about Nick Sandmann getting a huge settlement from CNN?" I must be dumb because I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know who Nick Sandmann is, and I never heard of this settlement from CNN. But I'd be happy to look into it if you want to tell me some more information. JC, did you ever get the Soldier Boy console? Funny you mentioned that, JC, because basically what Soldier Boy was selling was an illegal Chinese bootleg machine that just had ROMs on it and emulators. That's pretty funny that Soldier Boy tried to release that as a console. I find that really amusing. Oh, the Covington kid is Nick Sandmann. No, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear he won a lawsuit. I don't really care to comment on that too much. I think that the whole thing was really overblown, and I think that, I watched the entire video myself, and I guess I'll just leave it with those kids were acting really rude, and they were really disgusting. So I don't know if that's something that people have a problem with in this chat. I hope not. But yeah, I mean, that was sort of my takeaway from that. I wasn't really paying as much attention to the media, going over that story. And I understand that most people sort of looked at it through that prism, but I didn't. I just watched the video, the hour-long video, and thought, oh yeah, those kids were assholes. Fuck those MAGA chud, stupid fucks. Moved on to something else. If CNN libeled him or did something that opened them up to a civil lawsuit for one of those kids, then yeah, they deserve to be sued. But the kid's still a douche, still a MAGA ched little bitch, and I don't really have any sympathy for him at all, to be honest. But that's where I'll leave that. And without further ado, let's play the first game on here that I plan to play. This is a game called Mystic Warriors. It's a sort of not very well-known Konami game from, I believe it's from 1990, early 1990s. Level 1 online, yeah, that was actually really disappointing to me when I found out that I couldn't run Killer Instinct. I can't run a lot of those games that require a hard drive, it seems like. Even though it can run most PlayStation 1 games, which is surprising to me, it can't run a lot of these arcade games that require like a large amount of data. None of the Laserdisc games run on here either, like Dragon's Lair, like John was bringing up earlier. There actually is a nice little unit you can buy now that has all the Laserdisc games on it, another Chinese bootleg thing that's just Laserdisc games. But being completely honest, Laserdisc games are mostly a gimmick. They looked great, but they played terribly. So I probably won't even bother to be trying out any Laserdisc games on here. Yes, I did see Sean Hannity foaming at the mouth for war with Iran, John. Yeah, it was disgusting. And I just find it disgusting that someone like Sean Hannity will talk about how disgusted he is with Hillary, the warmonger, and act like he cares about Hillary launching wars, but then he himself is one of the biggest neocon warmongers on TV. It's fucking gross. J-Doll Music, there actually is coming out soon. They're releasing an N64, I believe. It's made similar to the analog NT machine, which is not even an emulation of the Super Nintendo, but it's a hardware clone of the Super Nintendo. It's basically cloning the hardware, and it's fantastic. Black Fox, these are all arcade games. This is a unit that has over 3,000 actual arcade games on it, and I'm going to be playing a game today called Mystic Warriors. So you guys need to tell me if the music on here is too loud or not loud enough, the game sound. So please let me know in the chat. I've never really done this before. Yeah, QNobs, the emulators are fine. I think the guy was talking about like a hardware unit that simulates N64. Maybe he wasn't, but... So let me know about the sound. What does it sound like to you guys right now? Mixed with my voice. Is this a good mix? What do you think? Someone chime in. Check, 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 check. Audio is a bit quiet. You mean the game audio is a bit quiet? Someone says perfect. Sounds about right so far. Audio balance sounds good. Okay, I'll make it a little tiny bit louder. And if it's too loud, someone needs to say something, okay? Okay, so it's a little bit louder now. And the game audio is probably going to get louder too when I turn it on. I'm taking a bunch of ibuprofen right now because I have a headache from staying up until 5 in the morning last night, worried as fuck that I was going to wake up to news that we bombed Iran. So give me a second. I'm just finishing taking these Advil. All right, let's do this. Yeah, this is going to be a test of my skills, how well I'm going to be able to multitask here. I'm starting with a fairly easy game. You can always try a technique called audio ducking in OBS. You know, level 1 online, I tried that just now before I started the stream, and it caused my whole audio setup to glitch out and the sound to go off for some reason. So something is... might not like my audio interface or something like that. OBS has had issues with it before, so I'm going to stick to this for now, but I'll be happy to turn the sound down at any time, so someone let me know. So I find this game pretty hilarious. It's supposed to be, if anyone's played Sunset Riders or the original Contra, it's in a very similar mold. But like Sunset Riders by Konami, it's a lot easier than Contra. I think they learned their lesson after Contra hit the home consoles that they needed to make it easier. I mean, I don't know if anyone's tried the difference between Contra on the NES and Contra on the arcade. The arcade is way harder than the NES. The jumping is like really slow. The movement's slower. The bad guys are almost just as fast as they are in the NES game, but you're slower. So it just makes the game way fucking harder. And I think Konami learned, based on some of the home console game versions that they made, you know, how to do it right. How to do more of an arcade game shoot 'em up that plays more like the NES Contra games. It's actually easier for people to pick up. And I like that this guy, this character sprite, is wearing like Speedos underneath his fucking His robe. It's really sleazy. Look at this billboard back here too. I mean, this is back during the good old era before, you know, before Gamergate, before Me Too. When there was a trend in Japanese video games for a while where all the women characters, female characters, would have just enormous tits and ass. Kind of a bygone era. I think Lara Croft was kind of the final nail in the coffin for that trend in video games. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't pay attention to new video games as much as I should. I mean, I know that they actually started putting like camel toe on 3D video game, female video game characters. I think I kind of slept through that era. Yeah, of course I remember Space Ace, John. Yeah, Space Ace was great. That was another Don Bluth animation game. They actually made a Space Ace 2, I think, as well.
No, we'll never get away with this. Let him go. Come on.
Let's just get this fucking boss character. I like that this game actually lets you use rapid fire when you have a special weapon. Shit. If you don't have a special weapon, it's not. You can't do rapid fire. Ah! Ah! See, now I have to fucking do this. Sorry, it's gonna be loud and annoying. Heather Barron says, we go to the retro gaming conference in Portland every year. Pinball machines and the old video games too. Yeah, that they do one of those in San Jose, here in the Bay Area, which is quite awesome. It's called the California Extreme. And they have shit that I've never seen before in real life. I mean, one of the cool things about it is they actually have all the Laserdisc games available. What the fuck? Yeah, they'll actually have all the Laserdisc games so you can see them for yourself in person and play them, and it's quite a trip. And what's also cool is you'll see video games that are actually pre-1980, like games that are not even running off of computer processors. There's some weird old games out there. The only time I can remember seeing one when I was a very, very little kid in the early 80s at a pizza parlor, like a black and white game with a light gun. And in the movie Dawn of the Dead, one of the characters is playing a game like that in the shopping mall arcade. They show actually an arcade in the original Dawn of the Dead and all these old style games I'm talking about. Oh, fuck, what am I supposed to do here? Oh, shit. I mean, so what do you guys think is going to happen next with Iran? Do you think this is the end of it for now? Do you think it's just going to... I mean... Do you think Trump is satisfied by this, you know, this non-response? You know, I guess doing a sanction is not a non-response, but... I just want to hear from you guys where you think it's going to go next. I'm still very concerned that Trump is going to wage war in Iran. And by that, I don't mean necessarily with the goal of taking out the regime and replacing it with a puppet government, but I do mean, at the very least, bombings on Iranian soil by American planes and boats. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that's a realistic possibility still? Or do you think that it's not realistic? And if it's not realistic, why? Why don't you think it is? Because when I talk to people about this idea of it being realistic or not, a common thing I hear is that a lot of people think that the economics of like the global economy will become too unstable if we launch a real war against Iran, and for that reason, sort of the ruling class will not allow it to happen. That's an interesting angle. I think it's maybe too favorable or too optimistic of an angle. I mean, I do think that definitely plays a role. They don't want the world markets to become too destabilized. But what we've also seen is, the way the oil companies acted during the Iraq War is, they were able to charge, the oil cartels, OPEC and stuff, were able to charge ridiculous amounts of money for oil because of that instability. And people just dealt with it. So I'm not really sure if that'll play as much of a role as people are thinking it will. But if you have a good argument for why you think that that's going to maybe put a damper on the prospects for war, please explain it in the chat. Ah, fuck. Motherfucker. Ah, fuck. Yeah, I'm doing bad, you guys. Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm going to continue doing this, I need to learn how to play video games better while talking, because I suck. And it's really distracting at the same time. So, gotta be honest, I don't know if this idea is going to work out. But let me take a quick break here. I'm going to put this on pause and just see what you guys are saying. Doug Wade thinks that proxy stuff could create something bigger, like bigger than it would have been up to this point. Absolutely true. I mean, there's plenty of different things that could be done. Attacks that could be done inside the country that'll be done under the guise of terrorist attacks or other groups, MEK, that won't put obvious American fingerprints on it to the general public. Only people like us will know it's probably American or the Mossad. Grant says we're going back probably to a slow burn with lots of saber rattling. It's going to be worse than it was before. Yeah, definitely. I think once we've gone past this point, it's going to be really surprising to me if the Iranian government doesn't have a more hard line, at least rhetorically, against the United States. And just that alone will increase tensions. But again, I don't blame Iran for that whatsoever. I put the blame completely on the United States for that. That's what they want. I mean, I think ideally the United States government and even the Mossad and the Israeli government, they want Iran to act more hawkish, to act more aggressive. Even if Iran is just blowing smoke, they want people to have that perception of them, that they're ready to kill, they're ready to fight, they're ready to do terrorism. Just like how, we already know that in the WikiLeaks dumps, there was an Israeli government official who said that it was actually favorable to them that Hamas won the general election in the Palestinian territories, because then they could paint all Palestinians as hostile actors from that point forward. So I think it's a similar thing. Not only was this assassination designed to goad Iran into a military response, it was also designed to goad them into acting more hawkish and to increasing and heating up their own rhetoric towards us. Russia and China may not allow a hot war with Iran. Well, I mean, we should play that thought experiment out, because they definitely, quote unquote, allowed us to have a hot war with Iraq. So who's to say that China and Russia will actually really legitimately stand up to us? I think that the relationship between Russia and Israel is a little more complicated than people realize. Netanyahu and Putin are actually quite close. They worked together during bombing raids in Syria. China, I'm not sure. I think China may play a bigger role in putting a damper on those plans than Russia will, to be honest. But again, I don't know other than the fact that Russia and China have nukes, I don't know if they're going to be willing to have a nuclear exchange or to have a hot war with us to stop us from having a hot war with Iran. They could try to punish us in some way, tariffs or, some kind of trade stuff, things like that. But I think genuinely, I really do think that the U.S. empire can get away with doing this on the world stage without other superpowers putting a stop to it. I really do think that. Now, I think it would be different if we tried to do that in North Korea. China would definitely try to put a stop to it. But I think this is different. I don't know if we'll see that play out in this exact situation. Rory O'Connor mentions the wag the dog concept about Iranian war. I mean, what's weird about that is even Chris Wallace on Fox News mentioned that. I mean, the idea that he was escalating this conflict right in the middle of these impeachment proceedings, obviously, I think a lot. I saw a surprising amount of people mentioning that. So, in fairness, even Fox News mentioned that concept of wag the dog. Trump wants to wait for second term to escalate, says Austin Clum. I mean, yeah, that would definitely give him the leeway to do it. It would also give him the more leeway to resist these forces. Now, what we saw in Obama's second term is Obama pulled back more from carrying out neocon agenda in his second term. In his first term, as Bill Kristol said, Obama was a born-again neocon. His second term was a different story. So I guess the only thing we can hope is that somehow in Trump's second term that he's less hawkish than he has been in his first term. But I think that he could get worse, to be honest. I mean, I really do. Someone says Mega Robot says, what the fuck is up with left commentators praising Tucker's anti-war credentials? Tucker is trying to portray Trump almost as a victim. Praising sharing his milquetoast anti-war stands only helps Fox. Well, I would say more than just helping Fox or helping Tucker get a pat on the back. What it does is it actually helps lower the bar of what being anti-war means. We have to draw a line somewhere, right? So when it comes to someone who used to be an Iraq war propagandist and also an Iran war propagandist like Tucker Carlson, merely just saying that he disagrees with these neocons now is not enough for me to be convinced that he's legitimately concerned about war. If he really wanted to go against his former employer, Bill Kristol, in case that people don't realize that, he used to work for the Weekly Standard as a writer, writing alongside some of the most dangerous neocons you've ever heard of, like Elliot Abrams. If Tucker hasn't written an essay explaining what it was like to work for those monsters and explaining why he hates them now in detail, I don't trust anything the motherfucker has to say. I really don't. And it's amusing to me that he's also constantly talking about the deep state. Well, guess what? The Carlson family has a history of being an arm of the deep state. I believe it was Tucker's grandfather. I was just made privy to this information by a Twitter user I forgot the name of, but Tucker's grandfather apparently used to be a CIA propagandist for Voice of America. I mean, Tucker wrote alongside Elliot Abrams in the Weekly Standard while Elliot Abrams had just gotten pardoned from the Iran-Contra scandal. Tucker is there writing editorials in the same Weekly Standard that Elliot Abrams wrote in, slamming and smearing Gary Webb for being a liar. Tucker Carlson basically carrying out an agenda from the deep state to try to smear a reporter who uncovered CIA drug trafficking in South America. And Elliot Abrams was also complicit in CIA drug trafficking in South America. You see a problem here? That Tucker is writing hit pieces about Gary Webb in the same exact issue of Bill Kristol's Weekly Standard that has Elliot Abrams pieces in it? I mean, I see that as a really big problem, and Tucker needs to be fully audited as far as this. So for anyone to be praising him without mentioning any of this stuff, or also reminding people, yeah, the same guy who called Iraqis primitive monkeys is actually speaking out against the Iran war. If you don't qualify when you're praising him with also criticisms, you're worthless to me. And I think you're actually doing damage to the anti-war movement by propping him up and being really soft on him. But what you'll see is the biggest platform people who promote him on the so-called left, most of those people who promote him and don't criticize him are people who are dependent on appearing on his show. They want to be invited on his show. And in fact, many of them have gone on his show. So it's a huge conflict of interest, first of all, for them. Somebody yesterday said that you should have a debate with Michael Tracy about, why you shouldn't go on Tucker or why Tucker's actually bad. And my initial thought was, well, Michael Tracy has a conflict of interest because he actually wants to be booked on Tucker. He's been booked on Tucker. I don't want to go on Tucker. If I did go on Tucker, I would make sure to sabotage the stream and record myself like that one guy did. I think fundamentally that sort of gives me the upper hand by default. I can't have a fair debate with someone about Tucker Carlson if they literally are dependent on getting booked on his show. That's not a fair debate. I don't have anything to lose. Those people do. So I wouldn't even want to engage in a debate with one of those people, because I think it would honestly be cringeworthy, because they would be experiencing a heavy dosage of cognitive dissonance, and they would have to be doing some kind of balancing act to explain to me why he's not bad and why they don't care about risking their ability to appear on his show, which they clearly do. I mean, some of these people, that's their biggest exposure ever. So I think it's a big problem. I think Tucker needs to be called out. I don't think he deserves a free pass. And I don't think Keith Olbermann deserved a free pass either. But it's strange to me that I don't ever remember Keith Olbermann getting this level of praise on MSNBC, even though he was actually constantly criticizing the president and the wars. So I don't know. I mean, it really bugs me. It's one of my biggest pet peeves in the scene right now. But what can you do about it? I mean, people are going to do their own thing. I'm not going to be able to tell people that Tucker Carlson is a deep state errand boy piece of shit who's probably running some kind of limited hangout operation on Fox News to please a sector of the ruling class in order to weaken or siphon energy from the anti-war movement to cripple it. I'm not going to try to convince people of that. If they can't see that themselves, and it's not that big of a deal to me. But I'm never going to not think that. I will always believe that, doesn't matter how many people try to convince me, oh, but Tucker's good. Here's why. Did you see this segment about this? No, I don't give a fuck. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to playing games. I'm going to try to answer more of your questions. But the last question I see on here that I'm going to answer is, Robbie, do you believe that aggression against Iran is not at all motivated by Israel AIPAC interests? No, I definitely think that it is. I definitely think that it's influenced by it. But I think that the narrative that it's being dictated by it, or that Trump and his administration are carrying these attacks out on Iran because they want to please Israel or because they're beholden to Israel, is a narrative that I don't subscribe to. And I think it's also a toxic narrative because it does remove agency from U.S. interests. And also, there's plenty of hardline anti-Iran Zionists, U.S. citizens here in the United States. And some of them aren't even necessarily Jewish. I mean, John Bolton is a hardline anti-Iran Zionist. He's not Jewish, but he has had an influence on the way this policy has gone. But again, I do think it's removing agency from the Trump administration and his own people that he has there right now to say this is John Bolton's fault. I mean, the buck stops with Trump ultimately. And yes, I know that the president is mostly a figurehead, but people would not have been giving Obama this kind of pass had he made these kind of moves. People would not have been giving George W. Bush this kind of pass if he made these kind of moves. So I think it's time that we stop ascribing this positive intent to Trump, that we give him and his administration more agency than a lot of people have been giving him. And also giving the U.S. empire plenty of agency. You know, Saudi Arabia and Israel do really fucked up shit. Their intelligence agencies are really crazy and fucked up. But I will always believe that the CIA and U.S. empire are somewhere around 50 to 100 times more dangerous, more resourceful, and more insane than both of those countries, their leadership and intelligence agencies combined. There's really nothing that will convince me out of believing that from what I've learned and what I've seen. So again, I do have to resist the idea that everything revolves around what Israel wants. I do. I think Israel and the United States share a very mutually beneficial relationship. And I think that will always be the case. But no, I don't think that the war on terror, I don't think that invading Iran would be done for Israel. It'll definitely play a huge role, though, and we know that Israel wants to see the annihilation of Iran. So that's what makes this even more dangerous, is that they have an extreme vested interest in that as well. So I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm just trying to take a more nuanced approach to it. J-Doll Music, no, I have not played Conker's Bad Fur Day. I heard it's good, though. People seem to dig it who are into classic games. Oh, that sucks. So I glitched out right there. I tried to... Okay, well. So that's Mystic Warriors, guys. Konami game from 1993. Ninja shoot 'em up. I plan to actually play through the full game for you guys today, but it looks like I'm not gonna be able to do that, because I'm not sure as hell not gonna start the game over. So I guess before I leave you guys today, let's try another random game here. I'm just gonna go down the list and I want you guys to pick a game, okay? So check out this list here. See something interesting, and I will put it on and play it for you guys. All right, Metal Slug 6 it is. Here we go. Obnobs, this is for you. Oh, shit. Sorry, John. I didn't see yours. I'll try to play Ninja Combat before I go. At least get a little bit of that in. So if this is too loud, let me know immediately, because some of these games very different volume levels here. How's the sound level, guys? Is it, okay. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. How's it now, Obnobs? Is it still really loud? Let me know if it's still too loud. I'll turn it down. Okay. Oh shit. This camel has a fucking crazy gun on it. I've never actually played this Metal Slug. And yeah, John's right. Metal Slug's war propaganda, for sure. But it's cartoonish, so it's all good. I can forgive it. What the fuck is happening? Why did I turn fat all of a sudden? Yeah, the art in this game is great, Obnobs. There's a couple other games that have a similar art style that I've never heard of that I found on here, so I'll try to pull those up for you guys in the future. One of the cool things about the Metal Slug series is that it has a ton of slowdown in certain parts, but it almost kind of works with the game. Like, it doesn't ruin the game or make it less fun to play. It actually makes it easier to play. If the game was always running at full speed, I feel like it'd actually be quite hard. So it's kind of a tradition that's gone through every Metal Slug game. I got Joust, yeah, John. I can play that at some point, for sure. Pretty much every classic game is on here, so if you think of any other classic games, give it a shout out. So that's pretty cool. Every time I shoot, a cloud floating above me throws down lightning. That's a cool power-up. I don't know what the hell that is, but yeah, I've definitely never played this game because I don't remember shooting all these aliens and stuff. Wow. I mean, the cool thing about Metal Slug is that it really does have some of like the best pixel art ever made. And one of the cool things about pixel art is a lot of the best pixel artists out there, they don't draw like concept art sometimes even before they make it. They do it directly on the pixel grid. And some of the best pixel artists, you know, they have to be masters at doing that. And there's some interesting, like, challenging things that you have to do that. Like, for example, the difference between an arcade screen and a home console TV screen, you actually have to change the pixel count. And it drastically can alter the way a sprite looks. So in the Street Fighter 2 home releases, they were working with a lot less pixels than they were in the arcade. And somehow they managed to pull off very convincing sprites that you don't even notice are far smaller amount of pixels. There's actually a really good video online where someone breaks down Chun-Li and the way they designed her in the Super Nintendo version versus the arcade version, and showing you like up close how much lower quality the Super Nintendo version is, but how the pixel art like masters who worked on the home translation were able to actually pull it off so you don't even notice it, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, Earthworm Jim is a classic good game with great graphics. It's actually one of the rare instances where the Genesis version of the game, most people prefer it over the Super Nintendo version, even though it's the exact same game. This Genesis version has like better sound and music because it has that classic FM synth in it.
Mission 2.
But yeah, I mean, after getting this machine, it kind of reminded me that the idea that modern video games are a bad influence on kids and teach people that war is okay is kind of historically inaccurate, since pretty much every single game, or most of the games that I liked as a kid, starting from the mid-'80s on, were all very violent, pro-war, you know, pro-U.S. government, pro-police. It's been a problem in video games for a long time. There's this one particularly notable game from the late 80s called Narc, made by the same company that made Mortal Kombat. And it's an interesting game because it was made in participation with the DEA, but the game makers themselves appear to have not taken the job seriously and instead decided to make a parody of what a narcotics officer, like, street battle game would be like. And you're literally going through the streets blowing up, like, crack and heroin dealers with, like, rocket-propelled grenades, and their body parts are flying all over the place. It's a fucking nutty game. Fully digitized graphics. Check out a video of Narc on YouTube if you've never seen it. It's ridiculous. I mean, it actually arguably almost looks better than the original Mortal Kombat game does as far as digitized graphics. Oh, I forgot I had these bombs. Jesus Christ. This game is chaotic as fuck. What the hell's going on? I'm a zombie now? Wow. Yeah, I have definitely not played these later Metal Slug games. This is pretty wild. Whoa! I could vomit blood on people? That's interesting. Wow, look at those sprites. Jesus Christ, that looks good. And I don't understand what this power-up is where I keep getting really overweight. It's interesting. You know, I never got into Call of Duty or Battlefield. I dropped off first-person shooters pretty much around the time when they all became geared towards multiplayer. I think it was actually Battlefield. Not Battlefield, something Tactics. Unbuttered Toast. I think you could probably tell me which game I'm thinking of, where it was like, I think it was originally like a Quake mod, where it's all about like tactical death matches with sniper rifles and stuff. It predated Call of Duty and Battlefield. Counter-Strike. That's what it is. You know, it's funny. I hate to say this because I'm sure there's some fans of that game in here, but that's actually when I took an exit from first-person shooters. Is I really disliked that game, and I also got mad at all my friends who got really into that game because they stopped playing the games with me that I liked. I was more into fighting games. I was less into multiplayer deathmatch games. Yeah, Grant's talking about how early PS2 games have that sort of racism GTA vibe going in them. Definitely. I mean, I would almost argue that GTA as a game presentation overall is less problematic than a lot of the other games that try to copy it. Because I think the people who made GTA are fairly smart people and understand satire. And even some of the racial stuff in it, I mean, I think it's done, I wouldn't say tastefully, but it's done in a way that I don't really have a problem with. I mean, GTA 5 is probably the most like that. And I think that they're pussies for saying, you know, I don't know if you guys heard this, but Rockstar Games, basically when they came out with Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a fantastic game, said that they don't even know how they would make another GTA game right now because of the Trump era, that, you know, they can't just like parody things like they used to because things have gotten so ridiculous, and PC, you know, they're like worried about PC culture or whatever. I think that's a cop-out. I think it's just as much of a cop-out as people saying they can't do Trump jokes, like stand-up comedians saying they can't. But that's a thing right now. A lot of people don't think that there's, you know, a lot of people agree with them. Tasteful racism. I don't think it, I mean, I personally don't think it's racist. Yeah, I think Grant's right. They are kind of like the people who made South Park. I would say their politics are actually less problematic than Matt Parker and Trey Stone, or is that their names? Definitely less problematic than their politics, but still has some problematic aspects for sure. I mean, I don't align with it, but what I actually got a kick out of is in GTA 5, there's definitely some stuff in there where you can tell that the people who wrote part of the game were like legitimately into conspiracy stuff, and not like just knowledgeable about conspiracy stuff, but actually like subscribe to some of it. There's a lot of stuff in GTA 5 about private military contractors in Blackwater and torturing the CIA, torturing people. you actually take part in a torture thing in the game. You torture someone, and you're working with CIA agents who are acting like real pieces of shit, and they're just portrayed as these really douchey, yuppie guys who are just like rich and dress like douches.
Mission 4, start.
Oh, this is crazy. There's an underwater level here. So before I go today, this is just kind of an experiment to see how this would go for you guys. I'm happy that it turned out okay. That I can actually play games, I should say easy games, while talking to you guys about politics. So I think I'm going to have to be very choosy about which games I play. They cannot require much concentration or thought. So I think beat-em-ups or side-scrolling shooters, easy ones, are going to be my go-tos for doing these. Wow, that's funny, Grant. YouTube actually blocked your comment. I can see it on my end, but it says it was held for review because you mentioned that in GTA 5 they talked about killing Mark Zuckerberg, or you get to kill Mark Zuckerberg. That's interesting. I didn't get that far in GTA 5, if I'm being honest. I didn't beat the game. I actually, right before I sold my PS4, I went on GTA Online. And I got pretty amused by it at first, and then I realized that it was all just microtransaction, that the best players in the game who just kill you every time you encounter them have spent probably a few $100s at least on buying fake money in the game. Kind of grossed me out. And then I sort of had the realization that that is the future of all video games. They're all microtransaction based multiplayer games. The era of a really rich solo player experience is kind of over. And even as much as I loved Red Dead Redemption 2, they definitely, are making the engine so that it's more open-ended for multiplayer online stuff. And the solo experience, as good as it was, left much to be desired, in my opinion, about having a really fleshed out sort of adventure, rich type of experience. But yeah. So I'm gonna close out of this one. I'm getting a little bored by Metal Slug. Obnob says indie stuff is where all the single player stuff is now. Yeah, that's what I've been discovering. But when you say single player stuff, most of the indie stuff out there that's single player is more retro style and lower budget. I miss the era when the really high budget games were focused on single player. And I would say that really one of the only companies that's doing that right now is probably Nintendo. Like with Zelda and Mario Odyssey on the Switch. They're geared towards single player, very hard worked on, beautiful, gorgeous games with, sort of open worlds, but not really. But I am going to Ninja Combat now, because John suggested Ninja Combat. So I'm going to leave you with me playing Ninja Combat. And we're going to say, I guess, that this stream was a success, even though it was a total experiment. And it's kind of an awkward concept that I'm doing. But I promise you, on the next one will be a little bit more planned out. And I'm going to have more actual topics to bring up with you guys. So here goes Ninja Combat, my last game of the day. Okay, this looks like a beat 'em up of some kind. Let's see. Oh, wait. Oh, wow, you have the same... It's very similar to Mystic Warriors. That's crazy. So I can get rid of my weapon. I can toss my weapon to the side and continue to use... This game seems pretty good, actually. Oh, I have a charge-up move. Oh, no. Okay, one of the problems with beat-em-up games is that almost all of them has a special move that takes life off of your actual life bar, which I cannot fucking stand. So I won't, anytime I play these games, I usually try to avoid using the special power-ups. shit. Fuck. Okay, I'm gonna try to make it at least past the first level here. These guys are freaking hard though. That's a cool axe. Seems like the ninja stars are like deceptively weak. These handheld weapons are really strong, but the actual projectile you shoot's like weak as fuck. Well, I'll just start ranting here while I close out this broadcast. I just hope to God that we do not goad Iran into more retaliations. I just hope that there is someone that Trump is listening to right now who is telling them how bad this will be for him if he does this. Because I think ultimately, sadly, this is what this is coming down to. Trump is motivated by himself and his own ego. And I think ultimately, if he's convinced that this will be terrible political fallout for him, and that it's actually going to ruin his legacy even more, I think that'll be the deciding factor for him. I honestly don't even think that Trump really cares that much about Iran either way. I think he just got into it because, it's what he should do as a tough guy. I mean, obviously there were neocons and other people. There's been long-standing forces who've wanted to do shit in Iran forever. I'm not saying that Trump isn't inspired by those or influenced by those. But I just hope that at the end of the day, he gets war weary. And that's the most favorable I'm going to be to him, because I really don't think Trump has any compassion for other people. I legitimately don't think that. I mean, I think that there is something odd about his personality where he doesn't really feel empathy for people. He's got something wrong with him. So that's what concerns me, if we're sort of leaving this to the idea that Trump might have a moral revelation of some kind not to do this. I don't think we can count on that at all. That's part of what scares me so much, is it has to come down to, will this turn out badly for him? Will this make him look bad? I don't even think it's as much will he lose his own supporters. I mean, I'm sure on some level he cares about that, but I think he is more concerned about how he's going to go down in history in terms of his legacy. And, that's not unique to Trump. I mean, if you read stuff about Obama and Clinton, it seemed like one of the biggest concerns from the Clintons when Obama became president was that their legacy wasn't going to grow as big as they wanted it to. And they were resentful at the fact that Obama was another Democrat who won 2 terms. The Clintons were the first, Bill Clinton was the first president to win 2 terms in a row as a Democrat in something like 35 years. So the Clintons were thinking that they would be all forever seen as special for sort of turning the tide of politics like that. Well, it turns out Obama did the same thing only 8 years after. And they never got over that. And you can read about this all in there's a book called Shattered that's about the election. And I'm trying to remember the name of the other book I'm thinking of right now. There's also a really great book that's all about the Obama-Clinton feud. And god damn it, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in checking out that topic. There's a shocking amount of resentment and basically hatred between the two families. Bill Clinton used to call Obama boy to his face while he was president. I mean, fucking crazy. But yes, Blood Feud. Yes, bayonets and harmonicas. How you doing, dude? Absolutely, that is what it's called. I don't really necessarily trust the author behind it. He's written some other really terrible stuff, but he seems to have gotten really good insider sources on this book, and there's a lot of inside baseball. It's pretty crazy. Definitely worth checking out. And I'll just say here for the record, preview for what's going to be in a Very Heavy Agenda 4 is there's definitely going to be a subplot in it about that feud and how much it actually played into what's happening right now. Edward Klein, yeah. Yeah, look him up. You know, always take things like with a grain of salt. You know, a lot of the political points of view in the book are basically going after Obama for not being neocon enough. And it almost kind of takes Hillary Clinton's side in it, which is interesting. But, yeah, check out that book. Check out the newest episode of Media Roots Radio. We did a new episode, an emergency episode called Stop Trump's War with Iran. Unfortunately, we recorded it the day before the Iranian military launched an attack at the U.S. military base in Iraq. So things hadn't escalated quite to that level. But I'm pretty comfortable with what we discussed in that podcast. I don't take anything back that I said. I don't even think we didn't go far enough. I mean, we went pretty hard against what's going on right now. And yeah, I have the tendency to get a little depressing. So please forgive me as I do talk about the prospect of nuclear Armageddon towards the end of the podcast. I don't mean to bum anybody out, but, you know, it's still something that I think about, so I thought I would share that with people. And, yeah, I'm not feeling this game anymore, so I'm gonna get out of here, say goodbye to you guys, and, why does this character suck so much? They just have, like, waves that come out of their weapon? That's bullshit. Look at that. How do I pick up this goddamn club? I'll beat this boss and then say goodbye to you guys. Ah, motherfucker. Fuck. Fucking fucked up. Fuck, finally. All right, guys.
You're the woman who...
Thanks again for joining this broadcast. You have come to the A Very Heavy Agenda channel on YouTube. And thank you so much for checking it out. And if you're a Patreon supporter of mine, thank you so much for continuing to support me. I really have to apologize for taking such a long hiatus and not doing live streaming. Of course, if you've joined me today, you can probably tell that I'm going to be doing this a lot more frequently. I have sort of a plan in place now. It's not going to be as sporadic as before. And it's possible you won't like what I'm doing now, you know, if I'm not just sitting there talking. But keep in mind that it's not just to entertain myself. I am also doing this to trick people into getting good political information. And a lot of young people and you know, nerds online watch these video game streams. So I'm going to keep that going. And join me next time. I will probably be doing this again tomorrow. And I will be doing it with a different game. If you want to suggest games to me on Twitter, and I'll take them into consideration. And I'll play them for you while I'm talking about politics tomorrow. So thank you so much. And if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/Robbie Martin. If you want to support our podcast, Media Roots Radio, you can do so at patreon.com/Media Roots Radio. We just put out a new episode yesterday. Hope you guys have a great new year. Hope you're doing well, John. Let's talk soon. And goodbye, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Take care.